Hi,
Hi,
can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Great.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Kimberly Goldburn. I am an English department intern here. I am an English major, majoring in English with a concentration in professional writing. I am also minoring in public relations. And tonight we have the first in a series of events called Women in the Workforce. Gigi Bellettiere. Thank you for being here, Gigi. Can you tell us a
Thanks
little
for
bit about?
having me.
You're
Yes.
welcome.
Well, that's so exciting to hear that you're an English major. Um, I know we had a great program. I know Kazi's here, and we both love the program at Southern, so I'm glad that, you're in it as well. And I'm sure it's hard being in college, like during COVID times. So kudos to you for still being in the program and still going strong. Um, I am 26 years old. I live in Philly. I went to Southern and graduated in 2017. I was a double English and secondary education major with two minors, one in Italian and then one in art history. I actually ended up going to get my master's of art in art history, and I now work in advertising. So it's been a fun ride. I don't regret any of my educational experiences, and I'm sure we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that as we go.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey on where you started and where you are now?
Yeah, so loaded question there. I've always loved writing, and I know my mom's here, but she can kind of vouch that I was always writing in journals growing up. I have, my parents still have them. I have tons and tons of composition notebooks, and I was always interested in different types of poetry, short stories, even just taking people from my life, incorporating it into my writing. I actually went to the Greater Hartford Academy of Performing Arts as a creative writing major. So I split my time between Newington High School, where, my family was, and then also at the Academy of Arts. So I was very busy from the get-go, going to two different high schools. I also did dance while I was in high school. I worked a part-time job at a restaurant. So I love doing a million things at once. So it was kind of a no-brainer that when it came to college, I wanted to do something with writing, and I've always loved kind of interacting with people, and that's the restaurant side of me. But I've always loved, just being a people person. And so when it came to college, I did want to do something with people. I want to do something with writing. So I thought that teaching would be the best option for me. I went through my degree. It took me about 5 years. Like I said, I double majored, and and then, along the way, I kind of fell in love with art history. I had Dr. Camille Serchuk as a professor, and if you are at Southern, go run to her office. She is amazing. She completely changed my life and is just such an advocate for her students, and is really, really just dedicated to what she does. And she's amazing and just so worldly and so knowledgeable about things, both dealing with school and not dealing with school. So like I said, along the way, I started minoring in art history. I actually went on the Paris Summer Abroad program, and I actually went to Rome too. So just those experiences and getting to see more art really steered me in the direction to kind of get that master's in art history. I was kind of always on the fence about it. And while I was student teaching, I actually was watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off for the first time with my students. And so I'm sitting in the back of the classroom, and I'm kind of in this moment in my life where I didn't really know what was going to happen next for me. And it flashes to the scene where I think they're at the Chicago Museum of Art, and it's just all of these famous paintings. And it kind of was this moment of an epiphany, and I was like, I need to be with art. And I think a week later I got my acceptance letter from Temple University saying I got into the program. So a little hallmarky of a story, but that's what really happened. So I went into a master's program straight from undergrad. I minored in art history, like I said before. So my master's program was a struggle. It was really challenging for me. I think it was being so young and being in a master's program is a challenge. It's not impossible, but it's definitely a challenge. Working while in a master's program, that's definitely a challenge as well. And also just coming from only taking 5 classes versus, people around me were coming from a major and they had been studying it, for the last 2, 3 years. So I made it through, and I passed my comps. I wrote my thesis, which ended up being a little bit over 100 pages, but it was a great experience. Kind of moving out of my master's program, I was in this kind of moment in my life again where I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I kind of had a few interviews at museums in Philly and the surrounding areas and was feeling super discouraged just because nothing was kind of working out for me. And then my advertising uh, situation kind of came along by happen chance. I met the CEO of my company at the restaurant I was working at in Philly at the time that I worked in throughout grad school. And right off the bat, we just kind of had a short interaction. And he said, I think you'd be a great fit for my company. And now when someone says that, you're like, that sounds suspicious. But the next day he, came back into the restaurant and I happened to be working a lunch shift and he's like, I really meant it when I said you should be working for my company. Please send me an email. I brought in my business cards. I was hoping to see you again, but I knew if I didn't see you, I would give these business cards to your manager, but I'm so glad that you're here. And it was just, I was like, all right, I'll send you an email. I sent him an email, had a few interviews set up, and I interned with that company from September to January. And in January of 2020, which feels like a million years ago because of all that's happened in the past year, I got promoted to a full-time position. And then COVID happened in March, but I was lucky enough to keep my job throughout the pandemic. And I've been working from home since March, and I just recently got promoted in January.
That's great.
Yeah.
Kazi, how did your English degree background help you with your master's?
Yeah, great question, Kazi. So I had to write a thesis. That's kind of the final step of getting your master's. And my thesis was on 3 different photographers of the 19th and 20th century. I also worked with feminist theory. I wove that throughout the thesis. And just writing in grad school is very intense because you're writing these 15, 20-page papers. And, you think of a normal class and you have maybe exams, you have homework assignments, you have, a lot of things that contribute to your grade. But in grad school, it's more of this one paper carries so much weight. And without my background in English, there's no way I would have been able to succeed at writing any of those papers. And just really starting from scratch, thinking of like the brainstorming process, the outlines, going through draft after draft and not giving up on yourself, not giving up on the paper, and just kind of working through all those processes. And I think that, our department at Southern, our professors really kind of taught us about, taking the time to work on writing every single day. And it sounds very cliche, but I know in college, you have a million things going on. You're working a job, you have a club, your friends want to go eat some food with you. It's hard to kind of balance that, but you get into this mindset where you want to leave it to the last minute, and then your writing really reflects that. And also vice versa, when you take the time to write a little bit every day, you go back and look at those drafts, you pull different, ideas from outlines and maybe something that you haven't thought of before, taking your time with your footnotes and all the editing, all the little things that really, it all adds up to like a meaningful paper. And I think for me, that was really reflected in my thesis and then my papers throughout grad school as well.
Great.
And go ahead, sorry.
I was going to ask you how your English degree has helped you with the job you hold right now.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so advertising in English, I mean, the creative aspects are still definitely there. What I do in my position currently is I work on the account management side of things. So in the agency, you kind of have the people who make the things, and then you have people like me who, help with everything else. So staying on timing, budgeting, knowing what our client really wants to see and help carry that out. Also dealing with that internal communication, talking to project management, talking to your graphic designers, just all of, those kinds of little things that you have to do on a daily basis to really, hit it home with all the projects that you're carrying out. So on a daily basis, I'm constantly writing emails. I constantly have to communicate. And even though when you think of an English major, you're thinking of writing and, just a good writer, but you also have to be a good communicator to really get those ideas across. So number one, definitely with email communication. And you can tell when people really struggle with writing skills, even with something simple like a communication. They're forgetting commas. They have a sentence that lasts about 5 lines, and there should be periods throughout just to take a breath, to separate those ideas. But just anything having to deal with writing, especially in my position too, project briefs, those are huge. And that's basically taking this big idea, whether it's a website or a brochure or maybe a pamphlet that a patient's going to see, and, really nailing those ideas down. So when you say to the team, hey, this is what our client wants, they can read your project brief and clearly understand what they're going to produce from that.
That sounds great. I remember you said that you were working from home because of the pandemic. Is there any other way that your job has been affected due to COVID?
Yeah, I would say, my job is centered around, just like a big overview picture. We're a pharmaceutical advertising agency. So anything, when you think of going into the doctor's office and you're asking your doctor about a certain prescription, maybe something that you should be taking, whether it's an allergy medication, maybe something for underlying that you just kind of found out that you have, we make everything that you see, you hold, pens, brochures, little booklets that help you explain maybe what you're going through, maybe what your options are. And then from there, we also do our digital stuff. So we're making websites, we're making online, printable objects that our patients can have. And I think with my job, a lot of things had to move to this virtual world very fast. So not only did we have the pressure from thinking, okay, can we go from being a very tight-knit organization to always being in the office, writing on whiteboards together, having these, going up to someone's desk and saying, hey, what do you think about this idea? And just those interactions, that was eliminated with COVID. And just like everyone else, we had no idea that it was coming. So I think the transition of our company was really difficult. And then also knowing that all of these materials, people aren't having those doctor's office visits like they would be on a weekly basis, or, just seeing their doctor for an annual visit. So just kind of making that adjustment to having more more print projects moving over to digital, and our print pieces, how do we salvage those? We've spent so much time and money, and, the budgets I can work with can be close to $500,000. So if you spend that much money on printed work, what do we do now? How do we get those out? And I think kind of taking that mindset and having to use it, and then also being resilient and doing it fast, because my job is very client facing. And if I'm stressed, my client's also going to be stressed. So I think, it was challenging on both of those levels. And especially for me, I kind of just got my foot in the door. I just started going to an office job, and transitioning from being an intern to then being a full-time employee. And then that kind of got swept away within my 3rd month there. So even for myself, just finding the work from home balance lifestyle, I'm sure that's a story for so many people. And just finding when to kind of shut your laptop, where to work, how to not make it feel like a snow day, because that's kind of what it felt like at first. You're like, this is cool. I can work from my bed. I can work from the couch. I can work in my sweatpants. But just knowing what you have to do on a daily basis for yourself to be successful working from home.
Yeah. Have there been any changes that have been implemented that may be permanent?
Yeah, and this is also, I think, universal for different companies. I think we're probably going to stray away from the typical 9 to 5 being in the office Monday through Friday deal, which is a weird concept to kind of even digest at this point, because, for a long time, I think the goal was to get back in the office by 2021. And I feel like that was always the light at the end of the tunnel. And we were like, once 2021 hits, the new year. And now we're in almost April and we're still not back in the office. But I think that this really is applicable to so many different offices, and just kind of this whole lifestyle change that I think we're all going to go through, and seeing how much work can actually be done from home and how you almost get just as much or more productivity from your staff when they're at home. So I feel, I can't say for sure, I don't think anybody can, but just moving away from the typical 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, you're in the office, and maybe it's kind of a hybrid of the two, or you only go in when you're needed, or maybe we might adjust and kind of go back and push for that, going back to our normal style before. But I think in terms of, advertising, I think that this has really opened a door to how much, stuff can be done digitally, and how many things, because when we think of digital stuff in the advertising world, we're like a website, but there's so many things that can be done, and you only think of it in a print manner and something that somebody can hold. But what happens when you have to stray away from, not being able to hold something, not being able to go to the doctor's office? So really just taking more print pieces and kind of putting them into the digital world, I would say, as well.
What has been the most exciting project you've worked on?
I would say the launch of a website that I worked on for a drug that had to deal with cancer, so metastatic neuroendocrine tumors. It took me forever to learn how to say that. I used to have it written phonetically at the top of papers, just so if I was ever in front of someone, I would read it. But actually seeing how much work goes into a website, because I think, if you think, oh, I'm going to go on forever21.com and like just look at shirts, but just so much work goes into being able to click on a specific shirt and see different sizes. Just like for us, we have to provide so much information for patients, so much information for the healthcare providers, so much information to someone who just comes on the website and they're kind of coming in and saying, hey, this might be, a prescription that my dad is going to have, or my sibling, and I want to read up more about it. So just approaching so many different audiences as well. But to see it all come together, to see it actually launch, and it launched at midnight because our development team is in California. So when it launched, we were on their time, and seeing it like come to life on a screen after months and months of work, that was super exciting. And it makes me have so much appreciation for things like apps, and even restaurants, just being able to make reservations on a reservation system, and it all goes so quick. And just thinking of how you're going to use different images, font colors, how it all has to jive together. And on top of all of that, it's a reflection of your company. What you're making is reflective of what your company can do. So if it's successful, you might gain more clients. If it's not successful, then vice versa. It's not going to look great for company as well. And then on another side of it, you also want to make your client happy. So a lot of different moving parts, and just to see the final result come to life was amazing.
Yeah. Is there any skills that you learned on the job that you had to learn as you go?
Everything. Because everything. I didn't have a degree in advertising. So when I kind of walked into this experience, I mean, my CEO was lucky. I was lucky enough to have him see a spark in me, but that spark is all I really had. I didn't even take one marketing or advertising class in undergrad, so I couldn't even say I had any type of experience. So when I walked in, I had to really kind of humble myself, because I just feel like I made this really big accomplishment by graduating with a master's degree, and I was only, 24. And to go from that to walking into a company where I knew nothing was a lot. But I was just able to digest information and ask questions on a day-to-day basis. And I think in school, they always tell you there's no dumb questions. That's such a cliche quote, but there really is no dumb questions. And it, every question matters. And I feel like when people come into the company and they're new, I always tell people, I'm like, ask me anything, ask me people's names if you forget them. Ask me, something simple on the computer. I can help you. But just having that knowledge and being able to, know that I have people in my corner that want to answer my questions was such a big help. But I had to kind of I had to kind of swallow my pride and realize that, I have a bunch of education under my belt, but this is kind of starting from scratch. So I did that. I learned a lot. I worked kind of extra hours to get to where I needed to be. But, by the time January came around, after about 5 months of being an intern, they were able to see that progress and had faith in me to keep going. And even in the past year, basically working from home for 10 out of the 12 months from January to January, I was still able to make a lot of progression and get promoted again. So, just learning as I went and also learning from others and really appreciating the people around me who were able to answer my questions on that kind of day-to-day basis.
So there are seniors graduating who are going out into the work field. Do you have any advice for them on how to break into the work field?
I would say be optimistic with whatever chance that you're given. And I would say that is kind of reflective in my experience where I had to work throughout graduate school. I had to work throughout undergrad. I also had to work throughout high school. And my parents are 150% the most supportive people, in my life. And I'm super grateful for that. But being able to balance work and school was really difficult. So I think that sometimes we can get so bogged down by, assignments and showing up for work and things like that. But for me, I would say no matter what you do, no matter if you're in a club, if you're having office hours with a professor, if you are just in a class, virtual or not virtual, if you're sitting in the seat, any type of interaction that you have no idea where it's going to lead. So even if something, comes across your desk or whatever it may be, take it with kind of an optimistic attitude, and you never know where it's going to lead you. And for me, this kind of all started just by my interaction with a bar guest. And I didn't know he was the CEO of a company. He was kind of he wasn't dressed in any kind of fancy fashion. And we had a great conversation. But from that, just that maybe 2 hours that he spent at the bar, he saw something in me that has now carried me into this experience that I've been at his company for almost 2 years now. So I would say, don't ever let anything seem like it's not good enough for you. Don't ever let anything seem like it's too good for you and you can't make it and you can't achieve. And thinking back to undergrad, I remember, I mentioned before that I studied abroad in Paris, and I remember seeing the flyers at school. And I remember looking at one of the flyers before one of my art history classes in the art building. And I said to Professor Surchuk, I said, wow, I wish I could apply for this, but I'm not an art history major. And she said, just apply, just see what happens. And I was like, yeah, but should I even bother? Should I waste my time with it? And she said, just apply. Just take my word for it. Just apply. Little did I know she was on the board of deciding who would get accepted, and I did. So I'm super lucky, but that's just kind of another example of you never know what you're going to get accepted into, what job offers, what companies want to interact with you. So be optimistic, try for everything, and if something doesn't work out, just keep rolling with it. Something will.
That sounds great. Is there any part of your job that surprised you?
A part of my job that surprised me. I think how malleable kind of customer interaction skills are. Because like I said, I worked in restaurants for 10 years, and a lot of people think, oh, you're just a waitress or you're just a bartender, but those skills really carried over into the workforce that I'm in now. And I think, being able to hold a conversation with anyone is really challenging. And I don't think you realize that until you kind of get into the workforce where you have to talk to a variety of different people on a day-to-day basis. And everybody has different personalities. So depending on who you're talking to, if you're talking to your colleague, if you're talking to an intern, if you're talking to your boss, if you're talking to the president of the company, if you're talking to your client's boss, you kind of have to shift your personality and just the way you communicate all of the time. And of course, you have your people in the office that you have inside jokes with, and you have, a lot of fun talking to them. But then you also have these really serious moments, but you also want to be yourself. So I think that's probably the most surprising aspect of having kind of a corporate job, if you want to call my job that, is just how much communication matters and how kind of difficult it is, and how much, if I didn't bartend and serve for those 10 years in school, my personality would be 100% different. And I think that those interactions over time carried me into the success that I had in my initial reaction with my CEO, and then in my day-to-day job, and just being able to communicate with so many different types of people in so many different fashions.
Great. We're gonna turn it over to the viewers now. Does anyone in the comments section have any questions they would like to ask Gigi?
I saw Kazi had one, but I don't know if it's still there. What was the job search like post college before Benchworks? How did you market yourself to try to get your foot in the door? That's a great question. So, like I said, after undergrad, I went straight into graduate school, which is a little bit different than what a lot of people do, because I know even with graduate degrees, people usually stop for a little bit, try to, get into the workforce and then go back to school. I kind of didn't have that same experience as I went straight from undergrad to grad. So coming out of graduate school, I initially really was set on the idea of going to get my PhD right after grad school. So as I'm sure you're probably thinking, you're like, whoa, that's a lot of school, but I was, and I didn't take a break after high school either. So I went straight from being in two high schools to undergrad to graduate school. And I realized that the PhD path just wasn't for me. So coming out of graduate school, I actually, I was applying to kind of anything and just any type of art history job that I could find. I was actually an intern at the Barnes Foundation in Philly for one summer, so I was really hoping to go back there. I was kind of really, I didn't really want to work in a huge environment, kind of like the Philadelphia Museum of Art or the MoMA or the Met or anything like that. I thought that was a little bit too overwhelming. But even opportunities that were paid low, I still kind of went for it. And like I said, nothing was working out, which was discouraging. And I think that you kind of have to trust the process. And marketing yourself, back to Kazi's question, you kind of just have to be true to who you are. And you want to reflect that in your resume, but you also want to be professional at the same time. So really working on your resume, I would say, is going to get you places. And I think that, have a lot of people read it. Have people read it who your med school friends, because they're coming at it with a different eye than somebody who might be a studio major. Somebody, one of your parents might work in insurance or as a teacher, and you just want all those different backgrounds kind of seeing, hey, you might be missing this, or I want to know a little bit more here, or it might be too long, it might be too short. So just getting a lot of different eyes on your resume. And I'm pretty sure in undergrad, Kazi actually helped me with my resume to get into graduate school. So it shows, us English majors stick together. But yeah, just marketing yourself and being true to who you are, especially in interviews. And I think that my situation shows that my interaction with my CEO was true to who I was. I mean, I didn't even know it was a mini interview at the time. And in my interview, I kind of had no experience in advertising. So usually you think of your standard interview questions. Oh, what other experience do you have? How will you be a good fit here? And I kind of was just like, I don't know. I'm going to try my best though. So I was true to myself in that way that I didn't have a lot of leverage and I had to just kind of bank on my personality and bank on the traits that I knew that I had. And I stayed with those. And I think that I keep reiterating the phrase staying true to yourself, but it's true. You have to just be a clear representation of who you are.
Yeah, that's great advice. Does anyone else have any questions? Anything else you would like to add, Gigi?
Um, well, thank you for your time and definitely thank you for having me. I've appreciated this experience so much, but um, just to anybody, you don't know where your path can lead, but there's so many people that have helped me along the way, and I hope to help people along my way too. And just being appreciative of every experience because it always will lead you in one direction. And if something doesn't work out, then something else will, especially, in those pivotal moments of time where you're graduating school and you don't know what's coming up next. And it's the pressure of, everybody around you saying, oh, where are you going? What are you doing? What's your job? And it's hard. It really is hard. So just staying positive, staying optimistic, staying true to yourself, it all pays off in the end.
Great. If there's no more questions, I think we can sign off.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for everybody who joined. I really appreciate all of your support.
Yes, and join us next week, same time here, for Chelsea
Great.
in the second series.
I'll be
Thank
back
you.
for Chelsea. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.